A really interesting thing is happening with Spiritism in general, in my view. As we have more and more Spiritist content in English, and as we find people searching for more and more information in English, there is an opportunity for us to get together and work across boundaries because, truth be told, we don't have as much content in English as we have in Portuguese or even in French, for that matter. So over the past years, as the interest for Spiritism and in Spiritism increases, we are finding that more and more people are willing to cross boundaries and just search for that information. So it's been really great to see folks in the United States, folks in Ireland, folks in Australia as well, folks in England, coming together and having these conversations about what's available out there, what kind of experiences they have had, and how they can come together in the future. The technology, of course, is a big factor here as well, because now we are able to have conversations across the pond, using all kinds of different tools, and lets us swap these different experiences, which only help us generate more and more content, have better conversations, longer conversations, more frequent conversations about all kinds of things related to Spiritism. So I'm really excited about the coordination and the natural bubbling of collaboration that I see emerging through the English-speaking world. And this is one of the reasons why we've started at the Spiritist Institute, which is a non-profit whose purpose is to advance Spiritism in English, because we see that happening naturally, and we also see that some overlaps that we could fulfill better by bringing people together in general. So that's very exciting. And personally, I'm also particularly excited because I think that Spiritism, when it is done in English and to a new audience that perhaps is not as familiar or as acquainted with Spiritism as the Brazilian crowd or the French crowd is, has something to give to all of us. As we develop this new materials in English, as more people are interested in this, it forces us, naturally, to go back to the basics. You go back to the foundations of spirituality and Spiritism, which sometimes have already been accepted and understood in other countries. So what do I say by that? Well, in Brazil, for instance, you have such a strong Spiritist culture that there is no need for you to go back to the beginnings and explain why reincarnation is a reality or what is mediumship. That has already permeated into the Brazilian culture, and it's already there whether you're Spiritist or not. In other countries who are perhaps still emerging on the Spiritism field, it's important for those who are practicing Spiritism and who are studying Spiritism to go back to those basic questions. And in doing so, those who are studying it strengthen their own faith and their own understanding of things, because they are having to grapple with these basic concepts that all of us should have, but that sometimes we forget. So I think that by this natural progression that's happening in Spiritism in English, this would also perchance help the rest of the world, the Spiritist world, so to say, to go back to some of the very important foundations of Spiritism that allow us to build even more things on top of what we have. As we continue to talk about mediumship, for instance, we see that within the Spiritist tradition, we have already satisfied ourselves with the idea that spirit communication is possible, because we have had so many different experiments taking place through history and taking place every day in Spiritist groups throughout the world, that the fact that mediumship exists is no longer a question for Spiritists. Nevertheless, spiritualists, on the other side, are oftentimes still very interested in validating the mediumistic phenomena and showing to others that that exists. So I think that as Spiritists become more comfortable, in the English-speaking world, we might see a trend in which this emphasis on showing the mediumistic phenomena might slowly give way to the implications of the spiritist phenomena, or the spirit phenomena, or the mediumship phenomena. What do I mean by that? I mean that instead of concentrating on showing to people or proving to some people who might be interested that there is indeed the opportunity for spirits, that is us, who no longer have a body, to communicate with those who still have a body, when that becomes more prevalent, we will stop thinking about whether that's true or not, and we are going to begin to think about, what does that mean? If I then outlive my physical body and life goes on after this life, then does it change the way I behave now? Should it change the way I behave now? Should I perchance be kinder to those around me? And if reincarnation is also a reality, should I also reevaluate my behavior? Right? So these are next level questions that I think that mediumship brings for us, for instance. So I'm excited about that, the possibility of having a two-way street in which those who are beginning to study Spiritism in English lead the rest of us back to the foundational concepts, and while at the same time those who have had more exposure to Spiritism can also help those who have less transpose these initial barriers that are focused only on the phenomena to go deeper into the meaning of the phenomena. So it's really a kind of like a divine match made in heaven here, where we have different perspectives coming together and helping each other grow and having a diverse thought process in general. Spiritism is a progressive body of knowledge, which means it's always growing and it's always changing. I like to say that Spiritism has started with Allan Kardec in 1857, but it has not stopped or ended with Allan Kardec, because every single day we add to the Spiritist building of knowledge. Right? The edifice keeps getting taller and taller because researchers throughout the world have come to add more information to Spiritism in general, and so we have wonderful books that were not written by Kardec, but who have become staples of the Spiritist tradition in general, such as the works of Emmanuel or Joanna de Angelis, through the mediumship of Francis Xavier or the Valdo Franco, to name a few, that continue to give us the certainty that one of the greatest qualities of Spiritism is being open to change and to growth. So in that sense, I think that the more that we do works in other languages, it lets us have insight into different perspectives of the same progressive body of knowledge, which stretches it. Right? This diversity of knowledge, this diversity of thinking can only benefit us. I know that we struggle with that in the modern world, but we need people who think different than us to push our boundaries and to help us grow. That's how scientific progress takes place, by us trying new things and see how they play. And the same should also take place in the spiritual field. We should also be having conversations with different people with different perspectives, and generally we have people with different perspectives who live in different places and speak different languages. So I'm excited to see that the contribution that English-speaking Spiritists are giving to the Spiritist movement at large, at the same time benefiting from it. So I'm really excited about this growing communication between the United Kingdom and Ireland and Australia and the United States, because I obviously am biased here, but I feel like the more communication we have and the more common contact and this idea swapping that we have, the better it will be for all of us. So I look forward to a continued collaboration amongst the English-speaking peoples of the world when it comes to Spiritist content and Spiritism in general, and I think that more and more will be positively surprised by the influence that it may also have in the non-English speaking world, much the same way that they also affect us when we do Spiritism in English.